So today I'm going to expose a fake conservative radio host. He portrays himself as a conservative to get viewers, or listeners rather, on the radio. But I'm going to expose him for the fake that he is. But first I want to tell you how we got here. So, I've been a news nerd, a political nerd since I was a teenager. And the research I find to be the best is to get the most information from your opposition. So I formed my conservative views as a teenager growing up in the inner city where everybody voted Democrat. Everyone said Democrats are for the poor, Republicans are for the rich. But I watched the Democrats just destroy city after city, just like they do now with their liberal policies that hurt the people they claim they're helping, but they're just taking away their power and making them dependent on the Democrats, basically, just like they do today. So I seen it firsthand. And then I seen Ronald Reagan, and I heard his ideology and watched his policies and effects they had, and became a conservative Republican at a very early age. Read lots of magazines. Back then there was no internet. I just would order so many magazines. I'll confess I wasn't a Christian at the time, so you could send a penny and get like 20 subscriptions, promise them you'll pay. So I used to get like 15, 16 years old, I used to get like 20, 30 magazines a month, and most of them were liberal leaning, some were conservative, so I got both sides. I'd go to the library and pull out a lot of books. I'd read newspapers, left-wing newspapers. And we had 3 channels, ABC, CBS, NBC, and it was obvious that they were left-leaning. I mean, it was very obvious to me, but for most people, they thought they were objective, which used to drive me crazy, but I just kept informing myself. But these people would portray themselves as objective, but you knew they were left-leaning the way they always spun the story. And the sources they went to, if they wanted to talk about policies affecting the black community, they wouldn't go to conservative black PhDs like Thomas Sowell. They would go to black liberal Democrats like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and get their spin on it. So this is the game they still play today. They act like they're objective, but they spin everything in the Democrats' favor. And Pew Research points this out from like 1980 to the 2000, 91% of journalists, mainstream media journalists, according to this poll, would say they were Democrats. The last 5 years, it went up to like 97%. So they're not fooling anybody, except the uninformed in this country that watch ABC, CBS, and NBC. Not knowing. I watch it knowing, and I want to see their spin so I can compare it to the truth, so I know how to defeat them in an argument. But that being said, they always acted like they were objective, just like today. They act like they're objective. They're just reporting the news. So I would also listen to AM radio because they were outright liberal. All the radio hosts, you knew they didn't try to hide it. They said they were liberal. They pushed for Democrats, but their ratings sucked because they were boring, and the average person isn't that far left in America. Well, then one day I turned on the radio to hear some liberal garbage to see what nonsense they were spewing. And I hear this articulate man, funny, sarcastic, really smart, but surprisingly saying everything I believe. A conservative, brand new on the radio. I think it was like 1986, 1987. And his name was Rush Limbaugh. And he became so popular, not because he was changing minds, but people with common sense were like, wow, here's a guy with common sense finally on the radio. And he was smart, and he knew liberals better than most people. And I always thought I knew liberals more than liberals knew themselves. And I realized, wow, this guy knows liberals better than I do. I can learn something from this guy. And one of the things I learned from the late, great Rush Limbaugh was that there was a lot of fake conservatives. He said, like in the Republican Party, there were a lot of these just like there's limousine liberals, there's a lot of country club Republicans, and they're just part of the Washington establishment. It's almost like a uniparty. They'll talk conservative, but they'll never take any action to really put in any conservative principles. So you have, you have the Washington establishment, the media, the Democrat Party, and these country club Republicans. And you've seen that when Trump became president and actually took action, didn't talk, actually made things happen and implemented conservative policies, put the 3 most pro-life judges in the Supreme Court, put hundreds of pro-life and conservative judges, originalist judges that interpret the Constitution and not activist judges that make laws, and was the greatest conservative Republican president we've ever had in our lifetime. Yet a lot of Republicans jumped ship and became never Trumpers because they really weren't conservative. They just, for whatever reason, wanted to be the opposition party that always loses to the Democrats and the media establishment. But then he also taught me something else. When media people seeing the great success, no one's ever been as successful. He had more radio stations than anyone in the history of radio. He was on more radio stations than anyone. All these conservatives started coming out, but a lot of these guys weren't really conservatives. They just knew, the conservative talking points, and they stuck with them. And over the years, I listened to some, and I'm like, this guy really ain't a conservative, and they bomb out and they go away because eventually you get exposed. But this one guy in Orlando, his name is Bud Hedinger. Good Morning Orlando. I've been listening to him for a couple of years, and I've kind of suspected he was a fake. I mean, he actually was a host of Bowling for Dollars, if you remember that show. So he's a little older. Bowling for Dollars in the 70s. Then he was a anchorman, newsman, weatherman. So he has a long career in media. Very talented guy. Great voice for radio. Very likable guy. You can, got charisma. Smart man. But I was like, just over the years, I could just tell this guy really isn't conservative. Really doesn't believe conservative principles. And, a few months ago, he really let the cat out of the bag, and it's something I can't even talk about on this channel. It'll pull me down, so I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to make the same video, but it'll be a little more to it on my Rumble channel, proving this guy's not a conservative. But today I'm just going to stick to abortion. Part of being a conservative is believing the Constitution. Part of being a conservative believes that part of the Constitution that says we have the right to life. We believe in life. Now, of course, he's got to check the box. If he said he was pro-choice, he would be off the air tomorrow. But he has 2 hosts. One's an outright liberal, Arlen Specter. He makes no bones. He's an extreme left-wing liberal. You could tell by his views. And his other co-host, Melissa Fox, she's another fake conservative, trying to talk conservative, tough on crime, wraps herself in the American flag. But she's not a conservative either, and today she really came out pro-choice, pro-abortion, just sounded like an angry liberal chick who wants to kill her baby if she doesn't want to keep it. But Hedinger, he had to check the box. He's like, I am pro-life, but I have a problem with this Texas law. If you're not familiar with what's going on, last night the Supreme Court, thanks to the 3 conservative judges that President Trump put into place, because we can't count on Roberts. He's a flip-flopper. They call him a conservative, but he's really not. He voted against this, but the 3 conservative judges that Trump put in, and also Thomas and Alito, 2 other solid conservatives, voted 5-4 to uphold the Texas law banning abortion after a heartbeat is detected. So basically 6 weeks. And Bud Hedinger, he said, well, I'm staunchly pro-life, but there's parts of this law I don't like. I don't like that there's no exception for rape or incest, and I don't like the idea that you can turn in your neighbor if she has an abortion and you get a $10,000 reward. Okay, so he did 2 things liberals do. Number 1, he misrepresented the law. You're not turning in your neighbor. You're turning in the hitman who killed the baby. Like Pope Francis says, getting an abortion is like hiring a hitman. So the woman doesn't get punished. The doctor who performs abortion gets punished. The murderer, the person actually killing the baby, gets punished. So just like any other tip line, if you call in a crime, if you call in a murder, and person's convicted, you get a $10,000 reward. So he misrepresented that law. He's making it sound, like little Nazis calling up, oh, my neighbor did this, my neighbor did that. We're talking about doctors performing abortions that they're able to call in. Then other thing that, people that aren't really pro-life will say, well, there should be an exception for rape or incest. So if you believe, like in one breath he's saying, I believe life starts at conception. Well, if you believe it's a life, then who has the right to kill that life? Dr. Ben Carson, before he ran for president, he was a surgeon, and he did surgery on unborn children. And he said the youngest, I think he said, was 12 weeks in the womb. The woman was 12 weeks pregnant, and he had to do surgery. But they gave that unborn baby anesthesia because they knew that baby felt pain. So, most people don't even know, and the liberals on the show, Melissa Fox, the liberal chick who pretends she's a conservative, and Arlen Specter, who's, I give him more credit, at least he's honest, he's a liberal hack. These two liberals were saying, it's the woman's right, it's her body, which, again, another reason I know these people aren't conservative, because conservatives usually have common sense, and we're not anti-science, and the science is clear. That's a separate human being from conception, has their own DNA. Any ultrasound, you can look at any ultrasound and see it's not the woman's body, it's a baby. So any conservative would say that's a baby. If you're saying you believe life starts at conception, then no one has a right to kill it. Okay? There's many rape babies and incest babies that are living now, and they're pro-life because they're glad their mother didn't choose to kill them. The baby didn't rape the mother. The baby didn't commit incest on the mother. The baby's an innocent child, does not deserve to be murdered. And like I said, they do anesthesia. They put anesthesia in a baby who's 12 weeks in the womb. Most people don't even know they're pregnant till they're 12 weeks. So they're having abortions, 12 weeks to 9 months. And, like in New York, their disgraced Governor Cuomo signed a bill allowing abortion through the 9th month and beyond. I did videos on that. I'm not going to get too much into that. But, these liberals, Arlen Specter and the other liberal, Melissa Fox, was saying, oh, well, they're not viable till they're 24 weeks. They should know right here in Orlando, Arnold Palmer Hospital is saving babies at 23 weeks. So that's number one. But number two, they feel pain. They feel pain. So that's murder. So this guy, Bud Hedinger, he crosses all the boxes, but when it comes down to defend, he actually is worse than a liberal because he gives weak conservative arguments. I mean, he wasn't defending life very well. And Arlen Specter and Melissa Fox were giving, the pro-abortion, liberal, left-wing ideology. They were giving their best arguments. And Bud Hedinger, I felt like screaming. I would call, but Melissa Fox screens the calls. She never lets me through. I felt like screaming, Bud, come on. There's much stronger arguments than that. But so when you listen to these guys on the radio and they act like they're conservatives, you really gotta listen. And sometimes they give telltale signs. So I'm calling Bud Hedinger a fake. And I've listened to him for years. And like I said, on my other channel, I can get more into this, why he's a fake. But for now, if you care about life, please, if you're buying or selling real estate, go to realestateforlife.org and tell them Blue Collar Catholic sent you. And you're guaranteed a pro-life realtor who will give a portion of his commission back to me to help me keep doing what I'm doing. So God bless and stay Catholic.